everybody, and welcome to She's in Business Live. I'm so excited today because we're going to be talking to Sally Farrant. She's been an accountant for the last 25 years, but has now shifted to helping small businesses really get a grip on their pricing and their profit. I know that this is going to be a really amazing episode, and I can't wait to dive in with Sally. We'll see you after the intro. Hey, welcome Sally, how you doing? I don't hear her.
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
Great. Welcome to She's in Business. How are you?
Good.
Good.
The tech's always fun, isn't it?
Yes. So there's always, especially audio, there's always a problem. So it's some level. But great, so I'm so excited to talk. This is one of my kind of favorite topics. I love geeking out about pricing. I love talking about making a profit. I find that a lot of, especially women in business who came from maybe a successful career in something else, they have some area of expertise, they decided to branch out, start their own business. These things were just not, I guess maybe they oversimplified it when they were doing their business planning, and all of a sudden they're kind of in the thick of it and realizing that maybe they should have thought more about their pricing. Maybe they should have thought more about how do they get to a point where they're making a profit, what that looks like, and it's all numbers. And sometimes that's a good thing. It can take some of the scariness out of it, but sometimes that really freaks people out too. So tell me kind of how you got into working with small businesses in this capacity and how you kind of became this pricing queen that you are today.
Yeah, so I'm an accountant. I've got 25 years of background. I worked in corporate businesses. I worked for TV companies. I've worked for publishing companies, stuff like that. But I've always worked in businesses, and I've always talked to people who are not accountants, and they don't understand these things. And yeah, you're right. Lots of people leave their corporate career or start a hobby that becomes a business, and then people go, I don't know what to do about my numbers. You know, they might have had to manage a budget of costs before in a business, but most of them, unless you're in sales, you weren't looking at how much is coming in the top. You're only worried about what is or isn't going in out of the bottom. So you suddenly start to have to look at everything in your business and understand, you know, how much you're bringing in, how much you need to pay the government, how much there's so many things. And I think a lot of people, and again, I think women particularly go, oh, I don't feel very confident with numbers, and therefore they kind of bury their heads in the sand a bit.
Yep. I do think it's it's almost like if they don't have the tools to be able to really look at the numbers and kind of like a more practical way, it can be harder for them to consistently look at it. And that's why I like talking to people who know the numbers and know how to simplify them, because it takes some of the emotion out of it. And like, okay, we're just going to look at these numbers. We're going to like think about this scientifically and, you know, figure out how we adjust things. Now, what do you find for most small businesses they really need to know, but they don't know? Like for somebody who's just starting out, like what do they need to figure out before they really can get to a point where they're profitable?
Yeah, so I mean, I think pricing is the most important thing. It's kind of going, but it is starting from need to know how much your business costs you to run every month, how much you want to pay yourself. Everybody goes, oh, it's all right, my business only costs me $1,000 a month. And you're like, yeah, that's great. But does that include paying yourself and paying yourself a proper living salary? You know, it's really important. And I think, and then it's looking at going, right, okay, so how much, if that's how much I need to earn, how am I going to make that? You know, and how do I make that? How do I price that up? And who's going to buy it at those sorts of prices? How many customers do I need? And all of that sort of thing. But it's really, I always think the starting point is always to look at what you need your price to be, and then look at the marketplace and the sort of transformation that you offer, rather than starting with, well, what does it look like in the marketplace, and oh, how do I squeeze myself into there? Because it might be that actually what you're offering is not something that's sustainable for you as a business.
And kind of what are what should really people start to understand about pricing besides just kind of what the market can bear, what they need to do? Like when they get into like, how am I really going to price my service or my course or my offering? Are there like key secrets or hacks to somebody who's just getting started to understand what that should look like?
Yeah, I don't think there are any enormous hacks to these things, but I think it is kind of going, right, what is the transformation that I give? And if you can say that you save a company or a business money or individual money,
Mm-hmm.
that's much easier. Like if you know that most of your clients save at least $1,000, well, if you charge 500, that's going to, they're going to get that result.
Yeah.
Some stuff is less tangible. It's more difficult to kind of judge that. But if you can do that, that's a really good starter. And I think it's trying to always move to talking about kind of the value and the transformation that you deliver and not about what you do and how you do it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So you may say, well, I help people with their pricing, and I do that in an hour and I do it, all these things. But it's like actually what they want to know is how quickly.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And the faster you can do stuff, the more you should be charging.
Yes.
But that's
Yes.
not how most people charge by the day or by the hour.
Right.
And it's like, actually, if you're good and you get a result quickly, charge more.
Exactly. I always say that the shortcut is what is the most value for a lot of people and what allows you to charge high ticket prices, for example, or more premium prices. You don't have to do it by hour. You don't have to stuff a bunch of stuff into those offers. If you get them the result that they want, you get it faster or easier than they would get it on their own. you're golden. So, and I know you talk a lot about just kind of key pillars that small businesses should understand, financial pillars around financial health and profit. Can you tell me a little bit more about that and what small business owners should be looking at?
Yeah, so I usually talk about four, which is kind of pricing, which we've talked about, performance, planning, and I've gone a total blank on my other one. Yes, pricing, profit, performance, and planning.
Yeah.
So looking at the performance of your business. So the profit one is a straightforward one. You take your revenue, you less your costs, and that gives you the profit.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whether that's before or after tax depends on how you look at it. Don't forget about your taxes.
Mm-hmm.
If you're a company, you have to pay company taxes.
Mm-hmm.
But also, if you're paying money out to yourself, you have to pay individual taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure you get good advice on what you need to be doing. It's generally around about 30%. I think that's true. It's true in the UK and the US.
Mm-hmm.
So keeping back that amount of money is a really solid way to kind of keep control of it. But the real answer is that if your revenue is more than your cost, you're making a profit.
Mm-hmm.
And you want to be moving as quickly as you can towards that position.
Yep.
It can get much more complicated. Do you know which things that you sell are profitable? What things can you sell with ease, that make you lots of money that you can do really quickly? I often use the example of somebody who in human resources who deals with disputes between employees. You get that result really fast.
Mm-hmm.
And you can manage that situation really quickly to a good solution for everybody, right? That's really, really valuable. So what is it that you do and what are the sort of services that you can offer that are easy for you to deliver and that you can repeat easily and quickly so that you don't have to worry about, well, actually, this is taking me way longer than I expected and all of that sort of thing, which is why I think people are often reluctant to move away from kind of pricing by the hour and that sort of thing. How can you scale your business? Where are you in your business? Are you looking at having staff? Are you looking for those sorts of things? And then you're moving into a slightly different stage of your business where you're fully booked, but you're like, oh, I can't quite. And then you have to start saying, well, what things could I do over here that don't need me so much? Which bits can I give to someone else? And those sorts of things. And what admin stuff can I actually outsource? So that's kind of the profit side of things. Performance, I just think you should always be keeping an eye on how your business is doing. Are you growing? What are your goals for it? That moves a bit into the planning as well, but it's kind of, what are you trying to do? Where are you trying to get to? What are you moving towards and how are you growing that? You don't have to have grand ambitions for your business. It might just always be you and that's fine, but you also don't want to be burnt out. You also want to have holidays. Why did you set up your business in the first place? I have not so small children and I wanted to have more flexibility around my kids. Some people have chronic health conditions. Some people just don't want to work as much. And that's all possible, but you've got to do it actively and not passively. So I think when it's monitoring performance, it's looking at what things, like I said, things that make you money, but also keeping a close eye on your cash. Because in the end, if you don't keep an eye on your cash, if you don't have the money in the bank, it doesn't matter what you're doing, you can't afford to, you will not have a business if you don't have any money in the bank because you can't afford to pay people. And then there's the kind of planning piece, which is kind of, I want to grow my business. I might want to employ people. And it's looking at, everything from, if I employ somebody, if then something happened and I didn't work for 3 months, how long can I afford to keep that employee on? Because you can't take an employee on at flexible terms. Employees require notice, maybe a month, all of that sort of, and you don't want to be messing around with people's situations like that, where a freelancer, they might have several clients. Most employees, you are their only client, basically. So you might want to have an office, maybe not these days, but if you're thinking, well, I'd like to have an office because there's going to be lots of us and I want to grow, it's like, well, when can I afford to do that? Should I buy it? Should I lease it? There's loads of those sorts of questions. And how do I grow, and what's the best way to kind of move that around and all of that sort of thing. And I think having a really good plan in place, and things like tax thresholds, so in the UK VAT thresholds, but other in other jurisdictions, all sorts of other things. As you grow, some of those things start to kick in. You're like, well, actually, I need to take this seriously as a business. And I always think that part of the planning is making sure you've got a decent accountant, one that does not talk down to you like you're stupid. Loads of people say they don't understand what their accountant's telling them. It's like, you mustn't do that. You need to go back and say, I didn't understand that. I need you to explain it again. I do it with my own accountant sometimes and go, I didn't understand that. It's really important. Otherwise, I think you can just go away feeling like you're completely not very clever. And people go, and some accountants take some pleasure in kind of being complicated in order to make you feel like they justify the fees. And it's like, no. It's not that complicated, or what the business owner needs to know is not that complicated.
Right.
So yeah, it's kind of, I think a lot of it's around planning and thinking forwards, and not just kind of trying not to have your business by the seat of your pants all the time. I think it's really easy to just kind of be living day to day, and it's like, actually need to have a bit more of a plan, I think.
Yeah. And what do you think, because you talked about, and I know this is going to differ depending on what people's goals are, but for somebody who's looking to have like steady growth in their business, they're not just looking to be kind of like a subcontractor or just make it, like they're looking to truly grow, but they want to grow at a sustainable level. I feel like a lot of people, if they don't wake up a year from now and they're making 7 figures out of nowhere, they think that they failed as a business. We say, well, you got to look at how much you grow year over year. Is there some secret number that accountants always kind of look at to see, hey, this business is growing at a healthy rate? They're not going to get overwhelmed, they're not going to get bogged down, but they're actually growing.
Yeah, I don't think there is really. I think it's a lot of it's dependent on your capacity, but I think it is starting to look at how you offer scalable things. So in a service business, how do you turn what you do? So most of us start out as basically doing jobs, having several bosses, all of that sort of thing, and then you suddenly go, hang on a minute, I don't really want to do that anymore. Yeah. So it's looking at what you want to do with what actually might scale. And it might be that you start with something semi-scalable, where instead of doing the done for you service, you do it with people. Or you say, here's a course, and then there's a bit of one-to-one added on. And there's those sorts of things that you can say, actually, as you move through, as you move and grow, those things, you may do less and less one-to-one, or your one-to-one becomes significantly more expensive. And you also can then outsource some of the other stuff. So it's looking and kind of going, actually, I need to outsource some of that. And some of that would be client work, and some of that will be your own admin. So yeah, I think that would be the kind of main thing. I think it's kind of looking at what you offer and how you might be able to take yourself out of the equation. If you were not there, how could your business run? Because time is precious, and nobody ever has enough of it.
Absolutely.
So what do you best outsource? What do you hate doing most? But also, what can you offer? Can you offer workshops to more than one person? All of that stuff that's much more scalable. But also, what do you like doing, and what does your energy allow you to do? Delivering live workshops is hard work.
Right.
If it's not something you enjoy, don't do it.
Right. Love that. So tell me a little bit about, we talked about having some like done for you services, done with you services. Are there certain strategies around pricing based on kind of, what the service level is, what people would want to be offering? Should they be saying, okay, you need a profit margin of 60% or 40% or 30%? What do you kind of look for with the clients that you work with?
Well, I always reckon that if you're a service business, you want to be taking home at least half
Mm-hmm.
of what you are taking in at the top, because otherwise it's a lot of work, because most of, and probably more than that, if you're not out, if it's just you want to be looking towards more like 70-75%, because there aren't very many costs in service businesses quite often, and all of it is about how much you are getting paid.
Mm-hmm.
So mostly it's kind of above 50 if you don't have a heavy cost business, because you're not doing, you don't have loads of staff already, then up towards 75, to make sure that you are getting paid for the work that you are doing.
And so how does that change over time as you're scaling? What is, somebody who's got maybe a small, because I feel like most people have like maybe a couple of most people that we work with at least have like maybe a VA or two, a couple of freelancers, maybe they do have an accountant or at least a bookkeeper who they're kind of paying on ongoing. Then what are they looking at after that?
Yeah, so I think you always want to be looking to pay yourself about 25% of the revenue. So if you've ever heard of Profit First, I was just trying to look up the numbers. If you've heard of Profit First, you pay yourself 25%, 50% is your costs, and then the rest goes in kind of tax and other stuff. But it's kind of that's a really, if you've not heard of that, read the book.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really easily accessible book,
Mm-hmm.
and it's kind of, and if you start by paying yourself 1%, and you just gradually move that up and up and up and up.
Yeah.
So if you're not paying yourself very much, that's kind of, but it's moving towards that sort of model where you kind of go, actually, I'm paying myself about a quarter of this is of the revenue, not the profit,
Mm-hmm.
and my costs are about half of that, and
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of where you want to move. There's a little bit. I mean, he has some models around kind of slightly different industries, but in a service business, that would be where you want to go with that.
Absolutely. It's so funny that so many people don't pay themselves, or they struggle to pay themselves, and we're always the first ones to like, well, we're going to cut our own pay. Like I do the same thing. I'm like, if there's a problem, I'm not going to pay myself, when it's really counterintuitive for the long term. And it's so funny how many people don't prioritize paying themselves, especially when they've been doing it a while. You should be
Mm.
making a good revenue, or you can go back, go back and work. So I love that there's some numbers around that, especially Profit First is great for that, of like, here's what you should be paying yourself, and you should be paying yourself that first.
Yes,
So
and
I
you should
love
do
it.
it first. And it is that thing of paying yourself first. But I think that's the problem. You get into a lot of, I think a lot of people either come out of a corporate job, or they start as some sort of, not quite a hobby business, but they maybe do it when kids are small, or because circumstances significantly changed.
Yeah.
So they sort of started something a bit different.
Yeah.
And I think that the challenge with that is that you've got to take it seriously. It's a
Mm-hmm.
proper business. You are an employee of the business. And you are also, I think part of the scaling thing is moving into being a chief executive.
Mm-hmm.
It's really moving up and going, I am not, this is not just about how much it pays me. I treat myself as a director of the business, and I'm paid accordingly. But I don't need to always do all the doing. So it's moving away from doing some of the doing. I think it can be quite hard to let go of some of that.
Mm-hmm.
But also having it is a different mindset to be running a business than it is to be doing the work all the time. And I think that can be quite a challenge, I think.
Yeah. Well, and I think you kind of hit the nail on the head earlier. It's like really understanding where you want to go in that planning piece. If you want it to be a hobby business and you just want to play at it as a side gig, what you're going to do and how you're going to structure it, what kind of profit you need is going to be entirely different than, hey, I do want to become a CEO of a company. Maybe I want to sell this company, or maybe I just, I want to run this company at a higher level. And so that's why it's so important. I talk to people all the time, like, what are your actual goals? And we're not usually talking about accounting related goals, but we are talking about revenue goals, so we can help them figure out how they market it, how they build systems around it. But most people don't know. They say, I don't really know. Well, what do you want to make in the next year? I don't know. And that's a very, very common, a common answer that we get when we have to say, well, we can't reverse engineer how we get there unless we know where we're going. You got to at least have an idea of where you're going, projections, goals, all of that. And it's so funny how many people don't have that. And I think you're right. They're in a hobby business. They don't think about it. They start to take it a little bit further, and then they're stuck kind of spinning their wheels because they didn't really have a full plan to begin with.
And I mean, I think one of the things about things like outsourcing is do it when you can afford half of it. Mm-hmm. I often recommend that you do it when you can afford half of it. Don't wait till you can totally afford it, because you'll be so overwhelmed because you've been working so hard. It's ridiculous. So, when you're starting to think about outsourcing, start early. Start as early as you can afford it. Yeah. I had a virtual assistant very, very early on, and it made such a difference. And then you just don't do that work. Yeah. You just pass that on.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what's so nice about like the online business space is it's kind of like more of a norm to like, you can bring on a freelancer that is hourly, or you can pay in package, or you can pay for bulk rates, where you don't have to carry and worry about bloat of, having a full, team of employees. And I love that about online business, that you can really control your costs a lot more, but still get the help earlier than you would have normally gotten in a traditional business where you got to bring an employee on, et cetera. So that's one of the things I love. There's a VA for everything, with every type of specialty, with every type of niche. So it's always good to, even if it's a couple hours a week, just getting rid of some of that stuff that bogs you down and doesn't make you money. Offloading that is just such a relief to people once they take the step to do it, and like, okay, I can do it. I'm going to do my first hire.
And do it when it's small, and then and then it's much easier to do because you're not trying to offload things that you don't like doing. Accounting, if you don't like doing the bookkeeping, don't do it. Yeah. Just get someone else to do it. Yeah. Get an accountant. Get people that can support you, and get somebody who can help you monthly with the numbers, not just at the end of every year when you've done your accounts and it's all out of date because it's not got to be submitted for 9 months or whatever it is. Actually get somebody who can help you, and so you kind of need yourself a little virtual finance director on the side with you as you grow. Once you're getting over the 100K mark, you want to be looking at having some proper financial support in your business to help you with decision making, and that might only be a couple of hours a month. Right. Just talking you through your numbers and understanding them and helping you with some planning. It doesn't need to be several weeks, several days a month. You might just find you only need half a day, and that's fine. And it's finding people that can do that. A bit like we said, the flexibility of freelance type resource means that you can have what you need for things, not having to pay somebody several days, 2 or 3 days a week to do something because that's the minimum they kind of want.
Right, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about, Sally, what you do. You're the pricing queen. I love that. Tell me about your programs, how you support clients. Give me the whole lay of the land. I'd love to hear more about your own business and how you support other businesses.
Yeah, so I run pricing masterclasses, and I run them quarterly, usually different ones, but I've got a kind of collection of those around kind of pricing in packages, that sort of thing. So it's kind of getting started. I do stuff. I do power hours with people where I sit down, and in an hour, if you're a service business, we talk through and we get some packages together for you. I do strategy sessions. So I kind of do that done with you planning session where we sit down for a day, kind of in bits. We don't do it all in one go because it gives me a chance to go away with it. But we sit down, we do the planning together, and then on my kind of real one-to-one stuff, I do that done for you, virtual finance director, kind of come in an amount of time a month, talk you through your numbers, look through your accounts, make sure everything looks tidy, and explain to you what's going on and do some forecasting with you. So yeah, so it kind of covers kind of the whole spectrum, really. I would say that with my micro businesses, I mostly do pricing stuff because that's where they're at. And then as we grow, we get more into strategy stuff, and a lot of people go, I need to know my numbers, and I don't really, and I'm slightly embarrassed that I don't know my numbers. And it kind of, And I don't think women are worse for that. I think they don't like. I get some people who come and say, "Oh, my husband's an accountant, but I don't want to tell him that I don't understand what he says." Like, it's free resource.
Yeah.
You go and pay me instead.
Yeah. Sometimes it's better to keep it separate. You know? I love that. And how can people connect with you, learn more about you, get involved with you, possibly even start to work with you? Where can they find you?
Yeah, so the easiest place is at Instagram, and I'm at the Pricing Queen. And my website is businessgrowthbynumbers.com, and there's all kind of work with me stuff on there as well. So yeah.
And we'll link all of that in the description so people can come find you. So, what is your biggest, as we close, your number one tip for people who are just starting? One thing that they could do today to start to understand their numbers more, start to understand pricing, start to understand profit, and start to make a change in their business to be more profitable, to price better. If they could do one thing today just to start, what would you tell them to do?
So we haven't talked about this, but actually it's about having a bit of confidence in your ability and your expertise. Remember, people are not paying for the amount of time that you sit in front of them. They're paying for the fact that you've got loads of experience in what you're doing. And even if you're doing something slightly different to what you were doing before, you still have loads of experience to draw on. And again, I think women really, a bit like getting a pay rise and things like that, women are really bad at going, actually, I'm worth this. And they kind of go, oh, I'll discount it and I'll give you a cheaper price. So when you go and give somebody a price, close your mouth, send it by email. Don't just wait for them to come back. It's awful. You hate waiting, but don't, like, it's really tempting immediately to go, yeah, I'll just get the price. And it's like, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't know whether I've lost you.
No, you didn't. I was
Oh, no.
trying to give you the give you the floor.
But yeah, that you kind of, yeah. So you kind of, I think it's having the confidence to go for it, and just wait for them. When you've sent a price, sit on your hands and wait. And if you're on a call with somebody, sit on your hands. But try and keep putting your price. Every 5 customers, put your price up, because you'll get more results.
Absolutely. We were just talking yesterday. Every win you get a client, start stacking those wins, start using it as social proof so you can justify your price more, you can keep bumping it up. It's like little by little bit you chip away and you look back a year, 2 years, and you're like, wow, look at where I started with my price. Look where I'm at now, just by slowly, moving our way up. So I love that. Well,
and niching can really help as well. So niching is another thing that can really help, because people can't compare the price. They want to work with you because you're the expert in that area. There are loads of accountants out there. There are not very many people talking about pricing.
Yeah.
So for me, that's become a good niche for me. And it means that people are not looking, if they want pricing help, they generally come to me. If they want accounting help, they'll go elsewhere, more detail, tax year end stuff, they'll go somewhere else, because it's not my thing.
Perfect. Well, Sally, thank you so much for joining us. I hope you'll come back and give us more pricing info as things change and things evolve in the marketplace. I hope you'll come back.
Be nice to come back. Thanks for having me.
Great. Thanks so much. And thanks everybody for joining us at She's in Business Live. This was a great conversation. I hope it's gave you some inspiration on pricing your services a little better, looking really at the profit margins that you need in your business so that you can build this life of impact, a business that sustains you and allows you to reach your goals. Thanks again to Sally for joining us today, and we'll see you all on the next one.